This presentation is taking a look at the law of Moses as a shadow. Now, there are several verses in the New Testament that describe the law of Moses as a shadow and juxtapose the law of Moses with the law of Christ. For example, Hebrews 10 verse 1a says, "For the law, since it has only a shadow, skia, of the good things to come, and not the very form, ikon, of things." Hebrews 8 4 through 5 says, "Those who offer the gifts according to the law, who serve a copy, ipodigma, and shadow, skia, of the heavenly things." And Colossians 2 16 through 17, "Therefore no one is to act as your judge in regard to food or drink, or in respect to a festival, or a new moon, or a Sabbath day, things which are a mere shadow, skia, of what is to come, but the body, soma, belongs to Christ." So we have four different words being used in these three verses. Two are being used to describe the law of Moses, and two are being used to describe Christ. Okay? So the first is ipodigma, which is a figure, copy, representation, model, example of an actual thing, but not the actual thing. And Christ is being called the ikon, a mirror-like representation that exactly reflects its source. Ikon assumes a prototype of which it not merely resembles, but from which it is drawn. And that is a quotation from Trench's New Testament synonyms. And you can see here that the law is not an exact copy, it's only a copy, a model, or an example. But Christ is an exact representation, a mirror-like representation, what is being drawn from a prototype. So you see the less exact law of Moses and the more exact Christ. And then thirdly, the law is being called a skia, a shadow, an image cast by an object and representing the form of that object, but not the object itself. Whereas Christ is the soma, the body, the thing itself, that which casts the shadow. So again, we see that Christ is the exact thing, the body. The law is only a representation of that thing, not the thing itself, only a shadow. And what we see then is that the law of Moses was only a temporary institution. It had a terminus ad quo, or a beginning, in 1400 BC, and it had a terminus ad quem, or ending point, in 30 AD when Christ, approximately 30 AD, when Christ died on the cross. And again, the law is that shadow, or that representation or copy, the skia or the ipodigma, whereas Christ is the soma, the body that casts the shadow, skia, and the ikon, not just a mere copy or a mere approximation or representation, but an exact mirror image that represents the prototype perfectly. And this is why in the New Testament we have these comparisons of Moses and Christ. Moses and Christ are frequently compared in the New Testament. For example, in John 1:17, "For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ." So we have the law of Moses juxtaposed and contrasted with the grace and truth of Jesus Christ. And then in Hebrews 3, 1 through 6a, we have a very interesting passage. Therefore, holy brethren, partakers of a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession. He was faithful to him who appointed him, as Moses also was in all his house. For he has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, by just so much as the builder of the house has more honor than the house. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken later. But Christ was faithful as a son over his house, whose house we are. So you see the juxtaposition of Moses as the servant and Christ as the son, of Moses as something temporary, only to be in existence until Christ, which is the permanent thing. And that note very clearly in verse 6, we are Christ's house. We are not Moses's house. We are Christ's house. So in summary, Jesus Christ is the prophet and lawgiver of the new covenant, just as Moses was the prophet and lawgiver of the old covenant. There has been a change in covenant, and therefore from old to new, and therefore there has been a change in law from law of Moses, which pertained to the old covenant, to law of Christ, which pertains to the new covenant. And therefore the law of Christ has superseded the law of Moses, just as the new covenant has superseded the old covenant. And thus the law has been changed from the copy, ibodigma, and shadow, skia, of Moses to the image, the mirror image, ikon, and body, soma, of Christ. And Hebrews 7:12 states this very clearly. For when the priesthood is changed, there has been a change of priesthood from the priesthood of Aaron, the Levitical priesthood, to the priesthood of Christ, the priesthood of Melchizedek. For when the priesthood is changed, of necessity, there takes place a change of law also. And the law has been changed from the law of Moses to the law of Christ. You see, the law of Moses went with the Levitical priesthood of Aaron, and the law of Christ goes with the Melchizedekian priesthood of Christ. We have something much better than the law of Moses. We have something much better than the ibodigma, the copy, the skia, the shadow. We have the ikon, the mirror image, and the soma, the body that casts the shadow. Thank you, and Evcharisto.